Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. When a new director, Alfonso Cuarón, joined the Harry Potter franchise, fans were cautious. He replaced Chris Columbus, who had directed the first two movies, and took on The Prisoner of Azkaban. One of the most beloved books in the series, expectations were high, and as expected, with a new vision, came not only visual changes but also shifts in the story. Today I'll tell you about the most noticeable and important differences between the book and the movie Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Enjoy the video. Number 1. The Patronus. Different memories. When Lupin teaches Harry the Patronus charm, he explains that it requires a truly happy memory. In the book, Harry goes through several memories, and only on the third try does it work, the moment he first learned he was a wizard and would be going to Hogwarts. In the movie, however, Harry focuses on an imagined scene with his parents and successfully casts the Patronus on the second attempt. This isn't just a change, it shifts the emotional core of the entire scene. Number 2, Aunt Marge's flight. Book or movie? In the book, the scene with Aunt Marge is more comical. She floats up to the ceiling while the Dursleys panic. But in the movie, Cuarón turns it into a true farce. She doesn't just float, she flies out of the house and drifts into the sky like a balloon. The tone changes. It's not so much magic as dark humor. Number 3, the Hogsmeade permission. What was cut? Harry desperately wanted to visit Hogsmeade with his friends. In the book, he even appeals directly to the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge. It's an important moment that shows Harry's naive faith in the justice of the system. But in the film, this part is cut, and with it, a piece of the character's vulnerability. Number 4, the Firebolt. Earlier or later? In the book, Harry receives the Firebolt as a Christmas gift. It's an amazing present, and the newest broomstick model, which is quickly confiscated by the teachers, who suspect it may have come from Sirius Black. A gift without a note, and that expensive, is suspicious. In the film, the broom appears only at the very end. No investigation, no tension, just Buckbeak's feather and Harry's smile. Everything's clear without words, but a crucial piece of suspense is lost. Number 5, the victory we were denied. Winning the Quidditch Cup is a big deal, not just for Harry, but for the entire Gryffindor team, especially for Captain Oliver Wood. It's his last chance. In the book, Gryffindor finally wins. It's the climax of the sports subplot and the resolution of a tense battle. In the film, just one match against Hufflepuff. We never see the final. Number 6, flying on Buckbeak, freedom or thrill ride. The film delivers a spectacular moment. Harry soars over the lake on Buckbeak, lets go of the reins and screams with joy. It's beautiful and thrilling, but in the book, the flight is short and limited to the area around the paddock, more of a lesson than an emotional experience. Harry even notes he still prefers broomsticks to hippogriffs. Number 7, where is Cho Chang? If you watch the movie but haven't read the book, you wouldn't even know that Cho Chang first appears in The Prisoner of Azkaban. In the book, she's the Ravenclaw seeker who competes with Harry during a Quidditch match. But in the film, this match doesn't exist at all. No Cho, no tense, stares over the snitch, no strategic gameplay. She will appear later, but the absence is already felt. Number 8, who discovered the Marauders map? In the film, it's Professor Snape who catches Harry roaming the halls at night with the Marauders map. He snarls at the blank parchment, demands it reveal its secrets, and nearly punishes Harry before Lupin arrives. But the movie skips a crucial twist. In the book, it's Lupin, not Snape, who first recognizes the map's true identity. He doesn't just know what it is, he knows who made it. This map was the work of the Marauders, he says, his voice low. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. Lupin was Moony. The map was part of his youth. That moment changes everything. It confirms Lupin's connection to James Potter. It shows that he's not just a kind teacher, he was part of something wild, clever, and deeply personal. He doesn't scold Harry for using the map. He scolds him for not handing it over when danger was near. There's affection in his anger, and when he says, "I thought you'd recognize it," we understand this isn't just an artifact, it's a memory, a piece of the past. The film's version removes that layer. It gives us tension, but not history, a confrontation, but not a connection. Number 9, the Marauders' backstory. In the book, the story of the Marauders isn't just background, it's a revelation. When Remus Lupin sits down in the Shrieking Shack and finally speaks, the room changes. He tells Harry that James Potter, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew became illegal animagi, not for power, but for him. "They did it because I was a werewolf," Lupin says quietly. They risked everything to make sure he wouldn't be alone during his painful transformations. James became a stag, Sirius a dog, Peter a rat. For the first time, Harry hears what kind of friends his father truly had. This truth reshapes everything: the Marauders' map, the nicknames, Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. It all clicks into place. Lupin's voice is filled with both pride and sorrow. These men were inseparable. They broke laws for each other, but one of them betrayed them all. The betrayal of Pettigrew, the coward who lived as Ron's pet rat for years, becomes even more monstrous when set against the loyalty they once shared. "He sold them to Voldemort," Lupin says, and the weight of it sinks in. The film skips nearly all of this. No deep explanation. No moment of clarity. Viewers who never read the books are left guessing. The Marauders' map is just a clever tool. The names mean nothing. The bond between James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter, or that fierce, reckless, beautiful friendship, is lost. And with it, so is a part of Harry's inheritance. Not just magic, but memory, the truth of who his father was and what he stood for. Number 10. Ron and Hermione's Crookshanks conflict. In the book, Crookshanks isn't just a clever cat. He's the spark of a deep rift between Ron and Hermione. From the start, Ron is furious. "That cat's got it in for Scabbers!" he shouts after Crookshanks lunges at his pet. Hermione defends her cat fiercely. Neither will back down. Their friendship cracks. For the weeks they barely speak. Meals are tense. Common room silences grow heavy. Harry is stuck in the middle, pulled between his two best friends, unsure what to say. This isn't a one-time argument. It stretches across chapters. Scabbers goes missing. Ron is convinced Crookshanks killed him. Hermione, heartbroken but stubborn, won't apologize. She's under pressure from her classes and Time Turner. Ron refuses to see her side. Even Hagrid notices. In a letter, he pleads, "You two are supposed to be friends." The feud isn't about a pet. It's about loyalty, pride, and the pain of feeling unheard. It's real and it hurts. In the film, all of that is reduced to a few snide remarks. A quick glare here, a hiss there. The complexity vanishes. The viewer never sees how deeply this divide affects the trio. There's no sense of loss, no emotional distance. But in the book, the silence between Ron and Hermione is louder than any shouting match. It shows us that even in a magical world, friendship is fragile. And sometimes healing it takes more than an apology. It takes time. Number 11, Trelawney's Real Prophecy. Professor Trelawney is usually dismissed as a fraud. Even Hermione calls her predictions a bunch of rubbish. But in The Prisoner of Azkaban, something strange happens. During Harry's final divination exam, Trelawney suddenly goes rigid. Her voice changes, and what comes out isn't vague or poetic. It's terrifying. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master. No one else hears it. Just Harry. And he's left frozen, unsure if it was real. In the book, this prophecy lands like thunder. It shifts the entire tone. Suddenly, everything that just happened, Pettigrew's escape, Sirius's innocence, becomes part of a much larger storm. Dumbledore takes it seriously. So does the reader. It confirms Voldemort's return is not just possible, it's inevitable. The prophecy points directly to Peter Pettigrew and the dark path ahead. It's the second true prophecy Trelawney has ever made, and Harry was there to hear it. In the film, the moment is there, but it barely registers. Trelawney speaks in a trance, yes, but the delivery is rushed. The camera cuts away too fast. There's no wait, no aftermath. Harry doesn't look shaken. The viewer doesn't get time to absorb it. The prophecy feels like a riddle thrown into the air, not a warning of war. It's treated more like strange trivia than a turning point. That choice matters. In the book, this is the moment when the story begins to darken. The innocent adventures of a boy wizard start to dissolve into something more dangerous. The prophecy isn't just about the past, it's about the future. And the film misses its chance to show that. Rowling's words are clear. The Dark Lord will rise again. It's not just fortune-telling, it's fate, and fate is never quiet. Number 12. Snape's role in the finale. In the book's climax, Severus Snape bursts into the shrieking shack, his wand raised, fury burning behind his eyes. He's not just angry, he's unhinged. "Get out of the way, Potter," he snarls, trembling with rage. He's certain Sirius Black is a murderer. Certain Remus Lupin is helping him. For Snape, this is justice long overdue. He was bullied by these men at school. Now he has the chance to expose them both. But Harry, Ron, and Hermione stand in his way. And when Harry disarms him with Expelliarmus, Snape is thrown against the wall unconscious. It's violent, humiliating, and deeply personal. But in the film, Snape's role at the climax is shrunk to a single gesture. He steps in front of the children as the werewolf transformation begins, arms stretched wide like a shield. It's brief, it's noble, and it changes everything. The vengeful professor from the book becomes a quiet protector. In the movie, there's no raging accusation, no explosion of buried schoolboy resentment, no disarming spell from Harry, just a moment of silent bravery, followed by chaos. This change softens Snape's image. In Rowling's version, he is bitter, blinded by hatred, and dangerously wrong. In Cuarón's film, he becomes something close to a misunderstood guardian. The tension between his past and present fades. His motivations are never questioned, and the reader who once doubted him now sees only a man trying to save children from a monster. It's dramatic, but it's not the same man Rowling wrote. Snape's failure in the book matters. He's not just wrong, he's proven wrong. Lupin wasn't a threat, Sirius wasn't the traitor, and Harry, the boy he loathes, stops him. It's a humiliation that deepens his bitterness and complicates his loyalty. Without that fall, Snape's arc loses weight. You think he's all noble, the book seems to say, but look again. The film never gives us that moment. It chooses mystery over truth. Number 13. Sirius's escape on Buckbeak. In the film's final moments, Sirius Black rises into the night sky on Buckbeak's back, framed against the moon. Wind in his hair, arms outstretched, he looks almost triumphant. Harry watches from the tower, awe in his eyes. It's a bold cinematic image, freedom painted like a myth. The music swells, the sky opens, and the man wrongly condemned for 12 years soars into legend. But the book offers a quieter version. No tower, no spectacle, just urgency. After saving Buckbeak with the help of Hermione's time-turner, Harry and Hermione find Sirius locked inside the tower room, weak and pale. They mount Buckbeak together. With a great leap, Buckbeak sprang into the air and soared off into the night. No dialogue, no fanfare, only silence and shadows. The escape is swift, practical, and tinged with sadness. Sirius doesn't celebrate. He disappears. Alfonso Cuarón, the director, made a clear choice. He elevated the moment to match the emotional weight of the story. And it works, for the film's tone. But readers of the book know that Sirius wasn't escaping in triumph. He was still a fugitive, still hunted, still alone. Rowling's version doesn't offer a clean break. It leaves Sirius in the dark, both literally and metaphorically. This contrast matters. The film closes on a symbol, the book closes on a reality. One gives us flight, the other reminds us of everything that's still broken. For Harry, it's not a fairy tale ending, it's a goodbye. He was gone, the book says, not a hero vanishing into glory, just a man riding into exile. Number 14. No tower conversation with Sirius. In the film, Sirius and Harry stand atop the tower, framed by the night sky. It's a quiet moment of hope. Sirius, eyes tired but kind, turns to Harry and says, "When all this is over, you can come live with me." The words strike deep. It feels like a new beginning, Harry's first chance at a real family. Their silhouettes vanish into the clouds, leaving the audience with a sense of closure, even peace. But this scene never happened in the book. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, their conversation unfolds not under the stars, but in the hospital wing. Harry is still recovering when Sirius appears, secretly, in dog form, with Madame Pomfrey unaware. He doesn't just speak, he acts. He hands Harry a letter, simple and powerful. I, Sirius Black, give Harry, James Potter, permission to visit Hogsmeade. It's not just a permission slip, it's a symbol. For the first time, someone is giving Harry freedom, not through magic, but through care. And Harry clutches that letter like it's a key to another world. This paper isn't just about Hogsmeade, it's Sirius's promise in writing. It's how Harry convinces Madame Pomfrey to let him go. It's the first sign that Sirius wants to take responsibility, not just escape, but provide. The book makes this deeply personal. Harry doesn't hear kind words, he sees action. And that small parchment bearing Sirius's name means more than any conversation could. The movie skips this. It gives us visual drama but loses the emotional depth only a written promise could bring. Without the letter, we never see Harry hold something real from Sirius. We don't see Madame Pomfrey's hesitation or Harry's joy. We miss the moment where he realizes, I'm not alone anymore. The tower scene might be beautiful, but the hospital wing moment is human. It's the first time someone signs a permission form, not because they have to, but because they love him. Number 15, Hermione's impossible schedule. Hermione Granger's third year at Hogwarts was never meant to be ordinary, not for someone with her hunger for knowledge and tireless ambition. The book Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban reveals a version of Hermione that the film adaptation only brushes upon, a girl so deeply consumed by the need to excel that she bends time itself. In the movie, her packed schedule is reduced to a few comedic moments and puzzled glances from Ron and Harry. But in J.K., Rowling's original novel, it's a slow-burning mystery that shadows the narrative, unraveling piece by piece like a well-guarded secret waiting to be discovered. From the first days of the term, something felt off. Harry noticed it. Ron noticed it. Even the reader was gently nudged to question what exactly Hermione was doing. She appeared at breakfast exhausted, snapping at Ron more than usual. One minute she was in charms, the next she was nowhere to be found, only to reappear later with an armful of new books. "How did you get here?" Ron asked her once, but she brushed him off, hiding a crack in her routine that would grow wider as the months passed. In the book, Hermione's behavior was not played for laughs. It was tinged with tension, secrecy, and the looming threat of burnout. She wasn't just studying hard, she was stretching herself beyond what was humanly possible. Her schedule included an overwhelming list of subjects: arithmancy, ancient runes, muggle studies, care of magical creatures, divination, transfiguration, potions, herbology, and defense against the dark arts. That's 9 classes. 9. Several of them were held at the same time, in separate parts of the castle. The film never properly conveys this contradiction, skipping over the bewildering logistics and the unease it causes in her friends. In the novel, her mysterious disappearances during the day become more than an academic curiosity. They're a puzzle piece that doesn't fit, a narrative thread begging to be pulled. The tension surrounding Hermione's impossible timetable builds slowly across the book. Ron becomes increasingly frustrated with her mood swings, her inability to explain her movements, her growing isolation. There's a moment when Harry wonders if she's hiding something. And she is, but it's not a betrayal or a dark secret. It's something far more fantastical. Albus Dumbledore has given Hermione a time turner, a magical device that allows her to turn back time by hours just so she can attend all her classes. This revelation does not come early, nor is it delivered casually. In fact, the book withholds this truth until the final act, transforming a subplot about academic pressure into a dramatic twist that reshapes the entire narrative. When Professor McGonagall first mentioned in passing that she would be handling Hermione's class scheduling herself, it was a clue easily missed. The movie glosses over this entirely. But in the book, this detail mattered. It suggested something unusual, something special. Dumbledore had entrusted a third-year student with a time-altering device, something even the Ministry of Magic controlled tightly. "Miss Granger, you must not be seen," Professor McGonagall warned her early on. The magnitude of this responsibility was immense, and yet the film treats it like a whimsical footnote, not the central thread it truly was. As the year progressed, the strain on Hermione became more evident. She was often sleep-deprived, irritable, and withdrawn. In one scene in the book, she breaks down in tears during a particularly stressful class. "I can't do this anymore," she admits, revealing a rare moment of vulnerability. These emotional fractures are absent from the film, which paints her as perpetually composed. But in the book, Hermione is unraveling, her intellect pushing her to a breaking point that magic alone can't fix. The film reduces the time-turner subplot to a convenient device used during the climax. It is introduced late, almost as an afterthought, when Dumbledore cryptically advises Hermione and Harry to save more than one innocent life tonight. Only then does the audience learn about the time-turner, and even then, its usage is limited to a single sequence. The depth of its earlier impact is ignored. The fact that Hermione has been using it all year long, manipulating time just to keep up, is barely explored. But in the book, the time-turner is not just a plot mechanism, it is a symbol of the unsustainable expectations placed on young shoulders. Hermione's use of the time-turner is a quiet rebellion against limitation. It's the ultimate overachiever's dream, to be in two places at once, to never have to choose between passions, to never say no, but it comes with a price. The book makes it clear that this method of living is dangerous, not just physically, but emotionally. Hermione begins to crack under the pressure. She fights with Ron, neglects Hagrid's case against Buckbeak, and eventually walks out of divination class, telling Professor Trelawney she's had enough. "I just can't stand it anymore," she says. That sentence, simple and raw, marks a turning point. The brightest witch of her age finally admits that even she has limits. One of the most haunting moments in the book is when Harry and Hermione use the time-turner to go back in time to save Sirius Black and Buckbeak. As they wait in the bushes outside Hagrid's hut, they see multiple versions of themselves, each moving through time with their own limited awareness. Hermione watches herself walk away into the castle, oblivious to the watchers behind the trees. This scene is charged with magic, but also with a strange sadness, the realization that all this power, all this manipulation of time hasn't made her any happier. It hasn't made life easier. It has only made it more complicated. The film captures the mechanics of this moment, but not its soul. It shows the cleverness of the plan, the rush of escape, the thrill of rewriting fate, but it misses the emotional undercurrent. It doesn't show Hermione watching herself and reflecting on what it means to live this double life. The book gives her those moments, silent, introspective beats where she contemplates the cost of stretching herself so thin. "I'm not doing this again," she tells Harry later, and the reader knows she means it. This isn't just about dropping a magical tool, it's about reclaiming her humanity. Number 16. The Grim and its Ominous Symbolism. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the figure of the Grim, represented by the massive black dog named the Grim, or as he is truly known, Padfoot, plays a haunting role in the life of Harry Potter. In the film adaptation, however, much of the psychological and symbolic weight tied to this creature is lost. On screen, the black dog is simply a looming presence in the background, revealed rather suddenly to be Sirius Black in his animagus form. But in the book, J.K. Rowling builds an atmosphere of dread and fatalism around the Grim, connecting it deeply to Harry's fears and the overarching theme of death that permeates the third installment. The result is a literary experience far richer and darker than its cinematic counterpart. From the very first chapter, the presence of the Grim is foreshadowed with ominous undertones. After accidentally inflating his Aunt Marge and fleeing from the Dursleys, Harry finds himself on Magnolia Crescent, where he glimpses a pair of gleaming eyes in the darkness. A large, spectral black dog is watching him. In the book, this moment marks the beginning of Harry's inner turmoil. He doesn't know what he saw, only that it chilled him to the core. Later, during his journey on the night bus, he sees the same dog again, and this time the connection between the apparition and death begins to form. The conductor Stan Shunpike even discusses the Grim, the harbinger of death in wizarding superstition, saying, "Seen the Grim, have you? The worst omen. Death follows around it." This idea takes root in Harry's imagination. He begins to believe that the black dog is stalking him personally, an idea reinforced when Professor Trelawney during divination class claims she sees the Grim in Harry's tea leaves. Her whisper, "My dear, you have the Grim," strikes a chord not just with Harry, but with readers who now associate the figure with imminent doom. Unlike in the film, where this scene is brief and treated almost humorously, the book gives the moment gravity. Trelawney's eccentric manner doesn't diminish the fear her words evoke in Harry. Her declaration isn't a punchline, but a prophecy that haunts him for chapters to come. Even Seamus Finnegan and Ron Weasley join in the speculation. They discuss the Grim as if it's an unavoidable sign of doom. Hermione Granger, ever the rationalist, tries to dismiss the entire concept as nonsense, saying, "Honestly, if you ask me, divination's a very woolly discipline." But Harry remains unconvinced. He knows what he saw. He continues to encounter the black dog in various forms, watching him from the stands at a Quidditch match, appearing in dreams, and most significantly, during his traumatic encounter with the Dementors. These recurring visions of the dog create a mounting sense of inevitability, of a fate slowly closing in on him. The film ignores most of these encounters, reducing Padfoot to a mere plot device instead of a psychological threat. The symbolic function of the Grim in the book cannot be overstated. It is not merely an omen, but a projection of Harry's deep-rooted trauma. He has faced death more intimately than most his age, and the presence of the Grim taps into his subconscious fear that he is destined to die young like his parents. This internal struggle is present in the text, particularly when Harry reflects after collapsing during a Quidditch match in which Dementors invaded the field. He doesn't fear the black-hooded figures themselves, but what they make him relive, the sounds of his mother screaming, begging Voldemort to spare her son. The Grim in this context becomes a mirror for Harry's grief and vulnerability. In the movie, this complexity is erased. The black dog is no longer a symbol of fate or death, but a literal creature, lurking with vague menace, its true identity swiftly revealed in the final act. Adding to the tension in the book is the Daily Prophet's portrayal of Sirius Black. One particular image, which shows Black gaunt and hollow-eyed in Azkaban, chills Harry, but so does the article that describes him as dangerously unhinged and obsessed with Voldemort. Later, Harry reads that Black has been sighted near Hogwarts, and this is when he begins to see the connections forming between the man and the Grim. In one scene, he even sees the dog's face on the front page of the Prophet. A mass of dirty, matted hair and those same gleaming eyes. That detail terrifies him because it confirms that the black dog he keeps seeing is real and somehow connected to the man who supposedly betrayed his parents. But what the film misses most of all is how the book masterfully uses the grim to frame Harry's confrontation with mortality. Rowling weaves this sense of doom so tightly into the story that when the truth finally comes out, that the dog is not an agent of death but a godfather desperately trying to protect him, it feels like a revelation, not a twist. The Grim's transformation into Sirius Black does not just resolve the mystery of the dog's identity, it shifts the emotional weight of the story. What Harry feared as a death omen was, in fact, a symbol of love, family, and lost connection. Sirius becomes the only living link to his parents, someone who knew them, loved them, and now offers Harry something he's never had before, a home. This emotional pivot is powerful, but its impact is weakened in the film, which never gave the grim enough psychological build-up for the twist to resonate fully. Number 17. Trelawney's credibility in the book. In the flickering candlelight of the divination classroom, nestled high in the North Tower of Hogwarts, Professor Sybil Trelawney swirled her shawls and gazed into crystal balls. In the film version of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, she is a curious spectacle, eccentric, vaguely comedic, with her oversized glasses, frizzy hair, and air of dreamy detachment. Played by Emma Thompson, she is portrayed as an oddity, hovering between parody and pity, a woman too caught up in theatrics to be taken seriously. Yet in the book, Sybil Trelawney is something else entirely. She is fragile, yes, and eccentric, certainly, but she is also powerful, a vessel for forces far greater than herself. The film flirts with her role in prophecy. The book makes it chillingly clear that the gift she possesses, however rare and uncontrolled, is real and dangerous. The dissonance between book and film lies in the tone and treatment of Trelawney's most significant moment, the second real prophecy she makes, the one she utters in a trance before a stunned Harry. In the book, this prophecy is delivered not with fanfare, not theatrically, but almost accidentally, a terrifying interruption of her usual theatrics, as if something ancient and unknowable had chosen her body as its mouthpiece. Rowling builds the moment with quiet dread, describing how Trelawney's voice changes, becoming hoarse, loud, and quite unlike her usual breathy tone. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers, she intones, and for a moment time seems to freeze. The words are not hers, not the same whimsical predictions of death she offers her students. These are words from the deep, raw, spectral, ominous. This scene in the book unfolds with a stillness that makes it all the more unsettling. Harry, who had just dropped off his divination final exam, stares in horror as Trelawney's body stiffens. Her eyes roll back. Her voice becomes unearthly. Rowling gives us no music, no visual effects, no winks to the audience. Only words, precise and terrifying. The servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master. The air is thick with prophecy. It is not a performance, it is revelation. The film, however, does not preserve the gravity. It presents the prophecy as another oddity, spoken in a melodramatic tone that reduces its menace to mere eccentricity. Curious monologue, perhaps? Not a turning point. In the book, the weight of this prophecy is felt immediately, even if Harry does not understand it. Rowling lets the words hang in the air, unexplained. It is only later, when Peter Pettigrew escapes and Sirius Black is forced to flee, that the full implications emerge. The servant, Pettigrew, has indeed returned to Voldemort, and this moment marks the beginning of Voldemort's resurrection. It is no less than the start of the Second War, foretold in a cracked voice under dusty lampshades. The film sidesteps this tension. It gives us Trelawney's strange utterance, but does not root it in plot. It forgets, almost deliberately, to tie her back into the story's spine. The tragedy is that Sybil Trelawney, despite her reputation, is the real thing. Dumbledore says it clearly in the books. She has made 2 true prophecies. The first was about Voldemort and Harry, the prophecy that sealed both their fates. The second is the one Harry hears firsthand. And yet, despite this extraordinary power, she does not control it. Most of the time, she is blind to it. She lives in an illusion of insight, a fog of incense and teacups, unaware of her moments of terrifying clarity. This duality is what makes her character haunting. She is not a fraud, but she is not in command either. The film simplifies her into a comic relief figure, brushing past this dangerous complexity. Rowling's treatment of Trelawney is nuanced. In the book, her classroom is described in lush, almost suffocating detail. The air is thick with perfumed smoke, curtains and cushions abound, low tables and stifling heat create a sense of dreamy unreality. It is a theatre of mystery, and Trelawney plays her part with flair. But when the prophecy comes, that dreamy atmosphere evaporates. It is not Trelawney speaking. It is prophecy itself. Rowling uses no exposition in the moment. The shift is felt in the prose, sharp, cold, sudden. The Dark Lord will rise again with his servant's aid, greater and more terrible than ever before. The reader is caught off guard. So is Harry. And so, perhaps, is Sybil. What makes this scene in the book unforgettable is its unannounced power. It is not framed with visual cues or music cues as it is in the film. It is not set up with suspenseful zoom-ins or reaction shots. Rowling simply drops the bomb in the middle of a quiet chapter, letting the horror sink in slowly. The film, by contrast, dramatizes the moment without understanding it. Emma Thompson's voice becomes breathy, her eyes wide, but the line between performance and prophecy is blurred. For a viewer unfamiliar with the books, it is not clear that this is something different from her usual antics. The significance is lost. The mystery becomes theatre. Even more troubling is how the film detaches Trelawney from the larger narrative. In the book, the second prophecy is pivotal. It sets into motion Voldemort's return. It gives meaning to Pettigrew's escape. It makes Trelawney a prophet in the truest sense, a tragic figure unaware of her own importance. The prophecy she speaks changes everything, even if the characters don't realize it yet. The film, however, treats it as a moment to be forgotten. No character refers to it again. Its content is not examined, its speaker is not revisited. The plot moves on, and Trelawney drifts back into comic absurdity. Number 18. Lupin's struggles as a werewolf. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the truth about Professor Remus Lupin being a werewolf is handled in the film as a brief moment of confession. He tells Harry flatly, without much depth or emotion, that he is indeed a werewolf. This moment, although significant, passes almost without consequence, leaving the viewer with more curiosity than clarity. But in the book, J.K. Rowling presents this revelation with layers of emotional weight and quiet tragedy. It is not a sudden disclosure, it is a mystery that builds across chapters, one that Hermione Granger solves not by accident, but through intelligent deduction. She observes how Lupin is frequently absent on the nights of the full moon, how he appears pale and weakened afterward, and how his demeanor shifts. She connects the cycles of the moon with his patterns of behavior, quietly piecing together a puzzle that no one else seems to notice. Lupin's condition in the book is never just a twist for shock value. It is a part of his identity that has shaped his entire life, filled with fear, isolation, and guilt. Rowling writes him as a man defined by restraint. He is careful, thoughtful, and kind, but beneath his composed surface lives a constant battle with the beast within. "I am a very dangerous man to know," he says in the book, not as a warning, but as a lament. He has lived in the shadows, afraid not only of what he could do to others, but of the stigma that surrounds his very existence, The book doesn't merely state that he's a werewolf, it shows how the world has punished him for it. Long before Harry ever meets him, there's a critical moment in the book when Lupin reveals to Harry, Ron, and Hermione how he became a werewolf. He was bitten as a child by Fenrir Greyback, a savage werewolf who targeted children. This attack changed the course of Lupin's life. His parents, devastated, tried everything to manage his condition. The wolfsbane potion hadn't even been invented yet, and magical society regarded werewolves with open disgust. Hogwarts, under Dumbledore's headmastership, was the one exception. Dumbledore took him in when no other school would, having the Whomping Willow planted and the Shrieking Shack built to give him a safe space during his transformations. These details, powerful and heartbreaking, are omitted entirely from the film. It is in the book that the real depth of Lupin's relationship with James Potter, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew is revealed. They were not just schoolmates, they were brothers-in-arms who loved and accepted Lupin for who he was. When they found out his secret, they didn't recoil. Instead, they learned to become animagi, unregistered, illegal, and painfully difficult, so they could accompany him during his transformations. This act of friendship was more than noble. It gave Lupin back his humanity. In those moments, he wasn't a monster. He was Moony, part of the Marauders, running wild but not alone. The film misses this emotional anchor completely. Viewers see a werewolf as a creature of terror, but not the man who spent decades trying to control the beast and cling to the fragments of joy he once had. Even the build-up to Lupin's secret in the book is steeped in subtle hints. Snape's antagonism toward him is not just personal grudge, it stems from an old fear and mistrust. When Snape tells the class to write an essay about how to recognize and kill werewolves, it's not a random assignment. It is a calculated move designed to expose Lupin. Hermione is the only one who picks up on this. She connects the dots, Lupin's absences, his symptoms, the suspicious essay. Her realization is not born from dramatic revelation, but from academic precision. It's this version of Hermione, sharp, observant, and brave, that shows how grounded and mature the book's writing truly is. Lupin's own fears of being discovered are ever present in the book. He keeps his distance from students. He remains guarded, often lost in thought. Rowling writes, "He looked ill and tired. There were dark shadows under his eyes, and he seemed more shabbily dressed than ever. This isn't just physical exhaustion, it's emotional weight. He fears that any moment of weakness could lead to disaster. He lives a life of quiet sacrifice, constantly protecting others from what he believes is his own cursed nature." None of this comes across in the film. Instead, we see a brief flicker of tension quickly resolved with a transformation scene that treats the werewolf as a visual spectacle, not a symbol of inner turmoil. What the book captures that the film does not is the cost of being different in a world that does not forgive. Lupin's condition is a metaphor for illness, for shame, for exclusion. He is not allowed to hold a job for long. Parents would never want someone like him teaching their children, even though he is one of the most competent and compassionate professors Hogwarts has ever had. He resigns when his secret is revealed. This moment is not just sad, it is infuriating. A man punished for something he never chose, a man forced to abandon a life he was finally beginning to build. The film brushes past this with little fanfare, treating it as an inevitable plot point rather than a tragedy rooted in deep injustice. The depth of Lupin's character in the book is also shown through his humility. He does not want praise or attention. He is hesitant to be close to Harry because he loved James so much, and he does not want to use Harry as a stand-in for his lost friend. "You remind me of James," he tells Harry, but quickly adds, "Not just in the way you look, you're like him in the way you act." He sees the past mirrored in the present, but he never tries to relive it. He respects Harry's independence and never forces himself into the role of mentor, even though he is exactly what Harry needs. The heartbreak of Lupin's story is that it never finds real resolution. Even after the events of the third book, he continues to live a life marred by loss. He falls in love with Tonks, but their relationship is fraught with guilt and fear. He does not believe he deserves happiness. He continues to see himself as a danger. These feelings are rooted in the pain that was carefully built up in Prisoner of Azkaban. Rowling plants the seed of this sorrow here, showing us not just who Lupin is, but what he could have been in a different world. The film's failure to explore this is not merely an omission, it is a disservice to one of the most complex characters in the series. The audience is left with an impression of Lupin as a mysterious figure with a hidden past, rather than a fully developed person scarred by history and softened by love. His werewolf form in the movie is monstrous and alien, a visual effect meant to evoke horror. But in the book, the real horror is internal. It is the fear of harming others, the burden of isolation, the injustice of prejudice. When Lupin finally does reveal the truth to Harry, it is not just an explanation, it is a confession. He unburdens himself with shame and honesty. He tells Harry how he was bitten, how he feared being expelled, how Dumbledore trusted him when no one else would. He tells the story of his friends becoming animagi, how they saved his soul, and he tells Harry that he has always watched over him because he loved his parents. This is not exposition. It is an emotional crescendo built over chapters. In contrast, the film hurries through the reveal, choosing speed over substance. Perhaps the most painful omission from the film is the power of chosen family. The Marauders accepted Lupin not despite his condition, but because of who he was. This bond defines him. In the book, Lupin says, "They didn't care that I was a werewolf. They saw me as one of them." That simple line encapsulates a lifetime of hope in the midst of despair. It's not enough to be tolerated. Lupin needed to be loved, and in the book, he was. Rowling gives Lupin dignity through his quiet resilience. He does not rage against his condition. He does not curse fate. He endures, he teaches, he protects, and he leaves when it is no longer safe for him to stay. He is the kind of hero the magical world refuses to celebrate, and that makes him all the more real. The film, though magical in its own right, never gives him the space to breathe as a character. He becomes a plot device, a guardian with a secret, not a man with a soul. To read Prisoner of Azkaban is to understand what it means to live with a curse that others fear more than you do. To watch the film is to see a glimpse of that pain, but never to feel it. That difference is what makes the book's version of Remus Lupin unforgettable. Number 19. Crookshanks knew about Peter Pettigrew. In the shadowed corners of the Gryffindor common room, while the trio bickered about broomsticks and escaped convicts, one creature had already sensed what others could not. Crookshanks, Hermione Granger's peculiar ginger cat, with a squashed face and unusual intelligence, moved silently through the corridors of Hogwarts, his glowing eyes locked not on students or ghosts, but on something far more sinister. To the casual observer in the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Crookshanks appears to be little more than an aggressive pet with a vendetta against Ron's pet rat, Scabbers. Their clashes are a source of irritation, of childish squabbles, of comic relief, yet this portrayal is but a shadow of the truth that J.K. Rowling wove into the pages of her book. For in the novel, Crookshanks is not merely acting on feline instinct, and he knows the rat is not a rat. He knows that Peter Pettigrew walks among them, hidden behind fur and twitching whiskers. Rowling does not leave this to mere subtext. From the first moment Crookshanks lays eyes on Scabbers, the tension flares. He lunges, claws, watches, not playfully, not hungrily, but knowingly. "There's something funny about that cat," Ron mutters more than once in the book, his frustration boiling over with each encounter. But Crookshanks is not chasing a rat. He is hunting a traitor. A servant of the Dark Lord who betrayed Lily and James Potter, who framed Sirius Black, who slithered away into anonymity by taking the form of a harmless pet. Only Crookshanks sees through the disguise, guided not only by his natural senses, but perhaps by something more. an unspoken connection to Sirius Black, who is himself an animagus and who sees in the cat a rare and unexpected ally. It is a connection that the film omits entirely. In Alfonso Cuarón's cinematic vision, Crookshanks becomes a minor player, his attacks on Scabbers dismissed as feline jealousy or instinct. The viewer is never given reason to question his motives, never offered the tantalizing truth that the cat is, in fact, working against Voldemort's loyal servant. The subplot of Crookshanks collaborating with Sirius, passing messages and even retrieving the passwords to Gryffindor Tower is discarded. The cat's intellect is dulled, his purpose erased. What remains is a flattened version of a character who, in the book, plays a critical role in unmasking a murderer. Consider the moment when Crookshanks presses his paw to the knot on the Whomping Willow, halting its thrashing limbs and allowing Harry and Hermione to descend into the secret tunnel beneath its roots. In the film, this moment is clumsily attributed to chance. The children simply tumble into the passage during a struggle, but in the book, it is precise. It is deliberate. Crookshanks darted forward and placed a paw on a knot in the trunk, Rowling writes, and at once the tree stopped moving. This moment reveals more than mechanical knowledge. It suggests collusion. Crookshanks has learned the Willow's secret not through accident, but through his association with Sirius Black, who had once roamed these paths as Padfoot. The cat's loyalty is not to his owner, but to justice, to the truth buried beneath 12 years of lies. When Scabbers disappears, presumed eaten by Crookshanks, the film treats it as a minor tragedy. Ron is furious, Hermione devastated, and their friendship strains beneath the weight of misunderstanding. Yet the novel gives the disappearance a far darker undertone. Scabbers has gone into hiding, sensing that the net is closing. Crookshanks has done more than chase. He has plotted, he has hunted, he has driven Pettigrew from the safety of his borrowed life. The cat's behavior, so easily dismissed by the characters and the audience alike, takes on the weight of prophecy. He is not attacking blindly, he is delivering justice in fur and claws, and still, the book does not stop there. When Harry, Ron, Hermione and Sirius finally confront Peter Pettigrew in the Shrieking Shack, the weight of Crookshanks' efforts is fully realized. It is not a simple ambush, it is the culmination of a chase that began in shadowed corridors and ended in shattered truths. The cat's actions helped reveal the secret of the Marauders, the betrayal of the Potters, and the truth of Sirius Black's innocence. Without Crookshanks, the chain of events leading to this moment might never have begun. His role, though silent, is thunderous. In one telling passage, Sirius even confirms the alliance. He explains how Crookshanks trusted him when no one else would, how the cat recognized him not as a maniac, but as a man. "He's the most intelligent of his kind I've ever met," Sirius says. The book offers Crookshanks the dignity of purpose. He is not a pet, not a mascot, not a sideshow. He is a character in his own right, with agency and insight. The film's refusal to acknowledge this renders him, unfairly, a nuisance. This difference ripples beyond Crookshanks himself. It weakens the mystery at the heart of Prisoner of Azkaban. The book's strength lies in its layers, the way truth is obscured by perception, by magic, by lies. Crookshanks peels back that illusion. His instincts challenge the reader to question appearances. The film, by contrast, simplifies. It exchanges slow-burning revelation for visual tension. A cat chasing a rat becomes a comic beat, not a clue. The audience loses the thrill of realization, the satisfaction of seeing puzzle pieces fall into place. Even Hermione in the book begins to suspect something deeper is at play. She defends her cat, not out of stubbornness, but out of an intuitive sense that he is acting with purpose. "Crookshanks isn't ordinary," she says. Her words, like so many threads in Rowling's tapestry, hold more weight than they first appear to. The film never gives her that conviction. Her loyalty to Crookshanks is reduced to mere pet owner affection, her defense of him brushed off as naivety. The truth is far richer. Hermione, always the seeker of logic and knowledge, sees that Crookshanks is more than he appears. The exclusion of Crookshanks's agency also dilutes the thematic current of transformation that runs through the book. Animagi, werewolves, secret identities, Prisoner of Azkaban is a story about masks, about the fluidity of self. Crookshanks' ability to see through Pettigrew's disguise is not just a plot device, it is a mirror held to the world Rowling created. It suggests that truth can be perceived even when it is not spoken, that appearances deceive, but instinct rarely does. The cat becomes a vessel of truth in a story riddled with lies. Rowling's decision to involve Crookshanks in the climax, from opening the passage beneath the willow to sniffing out Pettigrew's fear, reinforces the idea that intelligence and loyalty can come from the most unexpected places. His role parallels that of Dobby in later books, underestimated, overlooked, yet pivotal. In contrast, the film's portrayal robs him of that dignity. It renders him background noise, a blur of fur and frustration. Even Sirius, in his ragged, emaciated form, places trust in the creature. He entrusts Crookshanks with tasks, messages, keys, secrets. The cat becomes his accomplice in the search for justice, and for a man who had spent 12 years in Azkaban surrounded by Dementors and silence, that trust is not lightly given. It is earned, it is shared. Their alliance, invisible in the film, becomes one of the book's most quietly powerful relationships. Ultimately, Crookshanks in the book represents the triumph of intuition over illusion. He is a thread of clarity in a tapestry of deception. His presence challenges the reader to look beyond the obvious, to question what they are told, to trust what they feel. His actions, though wordless, speak volumes. They unravel a lie 12 years old. They unmask a villain. They restore a friend's honor. And they do so not with spells or speeches, but with silent persistence, with watchful eyes and unswerving purpose. By omitting this in the film, something essential is lost, not just a subplot, but a symbol of loyalty, of perception, of justice found in unlikely places. Crookshanks is not just a cat, he is a seeker, a hunter, a witness, and in the pages of Rowling's book, his story matters. Number 20. Missing Sir Cadogan. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the third installment of J.K. Rowling's legendary series, the wizarding world grows darker, colder, and more dangerous. Dementors patrol the grounds of Hogwarts, Sirius Black is on the loose, and every shadow seems to whisper the possibility of betrayal. But amid this gloom, the book also delivers moments of absurdity, levity, and distinctly British humour, nowhere more vividly than in the personage of the delightfully mad Sir Cadogan. And yet, when the story transitioned from page to screen, this beloved character vanished. Not a single trace of him remains in Alfonso Cuarón's cinematic adaptation, leaving a curious hole for those who had embraced the lunacy of this peculiar, ghostly knight. Sir Cadogan enters the narrative after a security crisis rocks the entire school. Following the moment when Sirius Black slashes the portrait of the Fat Lady in his desperate quest to enter Gryffindor Tower, a new guardian is needed. In the book, this role is filled not by a static replacement painting, but by Sir Cadogan, a forgotten knight whose painting previously hung somewhere in the castle's corridors. Described as a very small man in a suit of armour, Sir Cadogan appears riding a fat grey pony and enthusiastically volunteers for the position. Rowling writes, he had a mane of thick black hair, a scrubby beard, and an enormous sword which he brandished habitually as he gave advice to passing students. Unlike the dignified and somewhat reasonable Fat Lady, Sir Cadogan is wholly unhinged. He talks in medieval phrases, challenges students to duels, and leaps between paintings in full gallop, much to the horror of the Gryffindors, who simply want to return to their dormitory without a theatrical ordeal. In the book, Harry and his friends find themselves regularly frustrated by Cadogan's erratic nature, especially his obsession with frequently changing passwords, far more than any other portrait ever had. Rowling notes that the Gryffindors were soon regretting Sirius Black's attack, for Sir Cadogan, it seemed, had a liking for complicated passwords involving knights and quests. His presence, while comedic, serves several purposes in the novel. First, he underscores the magical realism of the wizarding world, where even the guardians of doorways are sentient and eccentric. Second, his ridiculous bravery, a ghost who still acts as if he's on a battlefield, becomes an ironic counterpoint to the actual threat of Sirius Black. Third, he injects a dose of surreal energy into an otherwise tense school year. In a novel overshadowed by anxiety and suspicion, Cadogan provides a break from the tension, a reminder that Hogwarts is still, at heart, a bizarre and unpredictable place. The film, however, offers no such moment of absurdity. When Sirius Black attacks the fat lady's portrait, the film shows the damage and the search for him, but when it comes to replacing the guardian of Gryffindor Tower, the movie offers no alternative. The fat lady simply returns to her post as if nothing happened. There is no small, screaming knight on a pony shouting, "Have at thee!" at terrified first years. There is no exhausting rotation of impossible passwords. The movie maintains the dark, foreboding atmosphere, but at the expense of colour, texture, and character. It is not only Sir Cadogan's personality that vanishes, but the entire subplot surrounding him. In the book, his constant changing of passwords becomes an issue of real concern. Neville Longbottom writes down the password because he can't keep up with the changes, and that piece of parchment is what Sirius uses to finally get into Gryffindor Tower. That one moment, Neville's mistake and Cadogan's chaos, becomes a pivotal plot point. By removing Cadogan, the film must find a different mechanism for Sirius's second entry into the tower. This small shift alters the logic of the story's events and removes the indirect but crucial role Cadogan plays in allowing the plot to advance. Sir Cadogan's absence also deprives the story of a chance to reflect one of Rowling's signature literary devices, the blending of comic absurdity with serious themes, like Gilderoy Lockhart in the previous book or even the poltergeist Peeves. Characters like Cadogan remind us that the magical world is not uniformly polished or serious. It is chaotic, inconsistent, and often hilariously inconvenient. His ridiculous commitment to duty mirrors the bravery expected of others in the story, yet his version of it is a parody, a childish echo of what it means to be a knight or a hero. Still, there is something charming about his refusal to give in to fear, even if it borders on madness. The decision to cut Cadogan from the film adaptation appears to stem from the director's desire to streamline the story and maintain a specific tone. Alfonso Cuarón deliberately reshaped the visual and emotional atmosphere of the series, steering it away from the colourful magic of the first two films and toward a darker, more mature interpretation. In that light, a comically unstable ghost in armour might have seemed too jarring, too light-hearted, too whimsical, but in doing so the film lost an essential shade in the palette of Hogwarts life. Even Rowling's language when describing Cadogan is imbued with affection. She never mocks him, though she certainly highlights his ridiculousness. When he volunteers for the position, she writes, he was delighted at being given the job and spent the whole day charging at people with his sword, asking them if they were friends or foes. There is a childlike joy in his delusion, and that joy resonates with readers who find themselves charmed by the idea of someone so completely out of touch with reality and yet so fiercely devoted to his ideals. Sir Cadogan's pony also becomes a character in its own right. The fat grey steed, exasperated and exhausted by its rider, often refuses to follow orders, creating scenes of hilarious dysfunction. Students are regularly caught waiting outside the tower as Cadogan bickers with his own painting. It is this kind of imaginative, layered storytelling that made the books so endearing. The omission of this subplot in the film removes not only a character, but an entire flavour from the experience. Cadogan's chaotic password system also serves as a quiet commentary on bureaucracy and authority in the wizarding world. His unpredictability is maddening, but it is officially sanctioned. The professors allow him to stay in the position despite the inconvenience, as if bureaucracy itself has a sense of humor. There's a strange realism in that, the way institutions sometimes accept madness because it fits within the rules, however inconvenient those rules may be. The character's popularity among book readers is enduring, even though he only appears in one installment. He represents a type of courage that is foolish but pure, a theatrical bravery that has no real battlefield but insists on fighting anyway. And perhaps that is why he resonates so strongly. In a world filled with looming war and betrayal, Cadogan's battles are harmless and entirely self-created. He swings his sword not to harm, but because it is all he knows how to do. Years after the book's release, fans still create artwork and memes celebrating Sir Cadogan. He remains a symbol of the quirks and delights of Rowling's world that didn't make it to the screen. He is a minor character with a major charm, a ghost who refuses to be forgotten, even when the filmmakers choose to pretend he never existed. What the book teaches us through Cadogan is that not all bravery is useful, and not all chaos is malicious. Sometimes a little madness is necessary to keep the world from collapsing into fear. As Hogwarts braces for the possibility of death and betrayal, it is a small, lunatic knight on a pony who reminds us that courage can be silly, passwords can be impossible, and sometimes the most absurd voices are the ones we miss the most. Number 21. Scabbers disappears. Early. In the pages of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, a seemingly insignificant pet becomes the center of one of the most emotionally charged subplots of the entire series. Scabbers, Ron Weasley's aging and scruffy rat, does not simply vanish without consequence. His gradual disappearance, the resulting suspicions, and the conflict that unfolds among the trio become crucial to understanding the depth of their friendship and the emotional tension that J.K. Rowling so carefully builds. The film, while visually enchanting and rich in atmosphere, chooses to bypass this entire arc, stripping away layers of drama, resentment, and reconciliation that made the novel so intimate and powerful. Ron's relationship with his pet rat was never particularly sentimental. Scabbers was old, lazy, and prone to hiding. Yet for Ron, who lived in the shadow of older brothers and lacked anything of his own, Scabbers had become a constant companion, a symbol of familiarity and comfort. When Scabbers starts to show signs of distress early in the third year, losing weight, becoming jumpy, and growing bald patches, Ron clings to denial. There's nothing wrong with Scabbers, he insists in the book, even as everyone else seems to see the truth. Hermione, who has just acquired Crookshanks, a large and intelligent ginger cat, becomes increasingly convinced that her pet poses a threat to the rat. The tension simmers quietly at first, but rapidly escalates. It is in Chapter 13, Gryffindor versus Ravenclaw, that the conflict explodes. Scabbers goes missing altogether, and Hermione is the prime suspect. Ron is furious, believing Crookshanks has eaten his pet. The narrative builds with painful precision. There is no instant resolution. Instead, readers are forced to witness the disintegration of trust between two close friends. The trio becomes fragmented. Ron and Hermione stop speaking. Harry is caught in the middle. "If you want to be friends with her, that's your business," Ron tells Harry stiffly. The warm unity that defined their earlier adventures is replaced by cold silences and divided loyalties. This isn't simply about a rat or a cat, it's about trust, misunderstanding, and the emotional cost of growing up. What makes this subplot so vital is its duration and depth. The strain between Ron and Hermione spans several chapters. It becomes a lens through which we observe their characters evolve. Hermione, consumed with academic pressure and moral responsibility, stands her ground. She insists Crookshanks couldn't have eaten Scabbers. Ron refuses to listen. Even when she breaks down in tears from the stress of using a time-turner and dealing with Buckbeak's trial, Ron doesn't relent. This extended conflict adds a layer of realism to their friendship. It becomes messy, flawed, and heartbreakingly human. Yet the film adaptation, directed by Alfonso Cuarón, largely erases this arc. Scabbers is barely present during the early parts of the story. There is no gradual disappearance. There are no anxious searches in the dormitory, no angry accusations over Crookshanks's behavior, no silent meals with Ron glaring across the table at Hermione. The viewer is given only a brief glimpse of Scabbers when he bites Ron and escapes into Hagrid's hut, an act that leads directly into the scene in the Shrieking Shack. The rich tension that brewed for months in the book is condensed into a few seconds of screen time. The emotional landscape becomes flat, the stakes lowered. Without this emotional prelude, the reveal in the Shrieking Shack loses its power. In the book, the scene is not just shocking because Scabbers is Peter Pettigrew, but because readers have been primed by weeks of doubt, suspicion, and resentment. When Sirius Black lunges for the rat and Lupin casts the spell to reveal the animagus, the moment carries the weight of everything that came before. Hermione's steadfast belief in Crookshanks is finally vindicated. Ron is forced to accept that he misjudged her. All this time he was right under our noses, Lupin says. And it is not only about Pettigrew, it is about missed truths, emotional blindness, and reconciliation. The quote, "Then you should have died rather than betray your friends as we would have done for you," spoken by Sirius in the shack, lands heavier in the book because it is delivered after a long, intricate journey. The betrayal is not only historical, it feels personal. The rat that Ron protected, fought for, and wept over was never truly his. The rat Hermione was blamed for harming was never innocent. The twist in the book is not merely a plot device, it is a blow to the heart. What the film loses in its brisk pacing is the haunting presence of Crookshanks. In the novel, the cat is more than a background pet. He partners with Sirius Black. He tries to attack Scabbers multiple times, not out of malice, but because he recognizes the human soul hidden inside. Crookshanks steals passwords, communicates with the grim-like dog, and acts with uncanny intelligence. Hermione sees these acts as loyalty and bravery. Ron sees them as aggression. The disagreement is not just about animals, it becomes symbolic of their values. Hermione relies on reason. Ron clings to emotion. Their clash is natural, painful, and very real. The scene at Hagrid's hut in the book is far more layered than what we get on screen. Ron brings Scabbers, who is trembling and sickly, clearly terrified. Crookshanks appears and lunges, and the rat escapes. This triggers the chain of events leading to Sirius. But what makes this moment tragic is that Hermione has just arrived, hoping to reconcile, only to be caught once again in the chaos. In the film, there is no context. The rat's escape seems sudden. There's no history of Crookshanks being obsessed with Scabbers, no whispered apologies, no build-up. What the book allows, and the film rushes, is character growth. When Ron finally sees the truth about Scabbers, he is not angry at Hermione anymore. He is stunned, ashamed, perhaps even guilty. He realizes that Hermione was right, that Crookshanks was trying to help, and that he allowed pride to come between them. Hermione, for her part, does not gloat. She simply stays close. The reconciliation is quiet, unspoken, and deeply moving. These are the moments that turn a magical adventure into a coming-of-age story. Without them, the characters feel more like passengers than protagonists. In the book, Harry is a witness to this entire arc. He is torn between his two best friends. His desire to stay neutral becomes a burden. He sees the cost of division and the pain it causes. It subtly shapes his own decisions later. The reader walks with him through every step of that emotional maze. In the film, Harry's role becomes more isolated. With the subplot removed, his function is reduced to reacting to external events rather than navigating internal struggles. That weakens the emotional fabric of the trio's bond. There's also a significant difference in how fear is handled. In the book, Ron's fear of losing Scabbers isn't just about the animal. It's fear of change, of growing up, of losing the innocence of childhood. Hermione's refusal to back down, even when scorned, speaks to the courage of conviction. These emotional nuances are left unexplored in the film. The drama unfolds in broad strokes with less psychological depth. We are told what happens. We are not made to feel it. The slow burn of the rat's disappearance in the book creates a tension that lingers like a shadow. Every time Crookshanks prowls past, every time Scabbers squeaks and hides, we feel the storm brewing. Rowling masterfully uses these small moments to build suspense. It's not just magic that brings the story alive, it's the waiting, the wondering, the aching silences. The film, by accelerating events, sacrifices suspense for spectacle. By the time the truth is revealed in the book, we're not only shocked by Pettigrew's betrayal, we're exhausted, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. We've followed this trail from the first signs of fur left behind on Ron's bed to the desperate scuffle in the shack. The film skips the trail entirely and arrives only at the final scene, asking the audience to care without having shown them why. It's the difference between watching a storm from a window and feeling the first drop of rain hit your skin. In storytelling, payoff only works if you invest in the build-up. Rowling understood this. Cuarón, in this instance, did not. The adaptation, while artistically daring, sacrificed the human core of the story in favor of atmosphere. What we lost was not just a subplot, it was the heartache, the doubt, the anger, and the healing that made these characters more than archetypes. It made them real. And in the end, Scabbers was never just a rat, he was a symbol of betrayal, of blind trust, of everything the children had to unlearn. Without his slow disappearance and the emotional wake it left behind, the story becomes less about transformation and more about exposition. The magic remains, but the meaning fades. Number 22, The Threat of Sirius at Hogwarts. In the third year of Harry's time at Hogwarts, a shadow loomed greater than any class assignment or Quidditch match. The name, Sirius Black, wasn't just whispered in corners, it echoed in every corridor, etched into the fabric of daily life like a storm that never broke. In the pages of The Prisoner of Azkaban, J.K. Rowling weaves this tension masterfully, and from the moment Harry boards the Hogwarts Express, the world around him tightens like a trap. Students are no longer free to roam. Lessons take place under strict surveillance. Curfews are enforced with iron resolve. In the book, the threat of Sirius Black isn't abstract. It's embodied in every tightened rule, every nervous glance, every silent hallway patrolled by shadowy dementors. But the film, while visually rich and artistically daring, brushes past this atmosphere like a wind skipping over still water. The prisoner's threat, so palpable in the novel, is diluted by omission, leaving only glimpses of the fear that should define an entire school year. In the book, Professor McGonagall's voice is sharper, more urgent. She informs the students that no one is to leave the castle unaccompanied. "You will all stay in your house common rooms until further notice," she warns after a supposed sighting of Sirius inside the castle. The castle becomes a fortress, every stone echoing with paranoia. Gryffindors whisper about the security of their dormitory as Sir Cadogan replaces the fat lady, whose portrait was slashed in a violent rage. The replacement isn't a charming quirk, but a symbol of deeper vulnerability. The safety of Hogwarts has been compromised, yet in the film, these incidents are streamlined, reduced, almost playful in tone. The slashed portrait becomes a fleeting visual. The constant state of alert is never fully realized. There are no huddled discussions, no recurring curfews, no quiet fear in the faces of the students as they descend to class, flanked by armed teachers. In Rowling's novel, the Dementors aren't just background creatures used for dramatic entrances. They are everywhere. They patrol the lake. They stand guard at every entrance. They hover near Quidditch matches, their presence threatening enough to knock Harry from his broom and kill his beloved Nimbus 2000. In the text, the Dementors create a sustained atmosphere of dread. They are a metaphorical and literal manifestation of fear, depression, and trauma. Dementors are among the foulest creatures that walk this earth, Lupin tells Harry. They infest the darkest, filthiest places. Their reach isn't just physical, it's psychological. Harry hears his mother's screams every time they get near. This is terror on a personal and institutional level, and it permeates the school like a bitter draught. But on screen, the Dementors, while visually arresting, appear only during key moments. Their role as a constant, suffocating threat is downplayed, confined to 3 or 4 cinematic set pieces. The students' day-to-day lives are deeply altered in the book. They are no longer allowed to visit Hogsmeade freely unless they have signed permission slips. Harry, lacking one, remains in the castle while others leave, isolated and embittered. This restriction isn't just a logistical inconvenience, it's a narrative tool that underscores his loneliness. He watches from a distance as others enjoy warmth and joy. The denial of simple freedoms becomes symbolic of a world closing in on him. In the film, this emotional terrain is flattened. Hogsmeade is presented more as a whimsical backdrop, not a forbidden world from which Harry is deliberately excluded. His longing, his sense of being caged for his own protection, is glossed over. Teachers, too, are changed by the presence of danger in the book. Professor Flitwick is no longer just the chirpy charms master. He's a man whose classroom now bears security enchantments. Professor Sprout's greenhouses are patrolled by prefects. Even Snape, usually aloof and mocking, is seen taking up guard duties. "We are taking every possible precaution," Dumbledore assures the students, but there's a weight to his words on the page. The school is under siege. There is a sense of a united front, an invisible but palpable coordination among the staff. Professors aren't just educators now, they are protectors, watchmen. In the film, this camaraderie under pressure is missing. The teachers seem unchanged, untouched by the threat. Classes continue with little to no visual sense of increased protection or altered routine. The castle itself in the book transforms into a character burdened by fear. The moving staircases seem less whimsical, more disorienting. The portraits whisper more frequently, passing rumours like conspirators in an ancient court. "Sirius Black was here," they mutter. "He got in somehow." The walls hold secrets, and the air vibrates with suspicion. Students look over their shoulders. The sense that the enemy is not outside the gates, but already within, makes Hogwarts feel less like a home and more like a haunted keep. In the movie, the whimsical architecture remains untouched. The mood is not one of containment but curiosity. There is no claustrophobia, no paranoia. The audience isn't allowed to feel what the characters in the book endure daily. Sir Cadogan's inclusion in the book is more than comic relief. He is a parody of security, a bumbling, overzealous knight who constantly changes passwords and confuses students. He represents the absurd lengths to which the school goes to project safety. Even in its fear, Hogwarts is not entirely competent. This layer of irony, this commentary on the illusion of control, is absent from the film. Cadogan is barely there. The student's frustration with his antics and the greater implication that Hogwarts is grasping for control in chaotic times is lost. There is also the critical scene following the Fat Lady's attack, where students are forced to sleep in the Great Hall, watched over by teachers who feign calm but are clearly shaken. "We'll all be safe here," Percy says with forced confidence. The image of hundreds of children sleeping in rows under the watchful eyes of professors is one of communal vulnerability. It paints a picture of a school that has turned into a shelter. Yet the film never shows this scene. The audience never sees the mass displacement, the hushed conversations in candlelight, the sense that something sacred has been broken. Rowling's writing crafts a world where threat colours every action. The school becomes more than a setting, it becomes a psychological pressure cooker. Students grow wary, friendships fray. Even Crookshanks and Scabbers become symbols of suspicion. In contrast, the film's atmosphere never truly reflects the escalating anxiety. Without that build-up, Sirius Black's eventual confrontation with the trio loses weight. The danger feels abrupt, unearned. There is little narrative pressure behind the explosion of truth in the Shrieking Shack because the film has not truly made the audience feel hunted. Even the Marauders map serves a different emotional purpose in the book. For Harry, it's not just a tool of mischief, it's a form of defiance, a way to assert autonomy in a world of restrictions. Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs are proud to present becomes a rebellion against control, a light in a dark tunnel. The map gives Harry a sense of agency, but only because we have seen how trapped he is. In the film, the map appears, but the context of its emotional value is never fully explored. It's a prop, not a symbol. The cumulative effect of all these missing layers in the film is a loss of emotional depth. The book invites the reader into a slow, creeping tension. It is not merely the story of a convict escaping prison, it's the story of a school living under siege, of children navigating a world that suddenly feels unsafe, of safety becoming an illusion. The film, in its brevity and visual priorities, trades psychological realism for pacing and spectacle. Sirius Black, in the book, is less a person than a shadow for most of the narrative. He is a name on every tongue, a face in every nightmare. Students believe he's a murderer. Teachers fear his cunning. The Daily Prophet warns that he is armed and dangerous. He's after you, Harry, they say, and the world tightens its grip. But in the movie, this slow burn is reduced to brief mentions and newspaper clippings. There is little sense of Sirius as a living ghost within the walls. When he does finally appear, the catharsis is diminished. Ultimately, the difference lies in tone. The book is a slow psychological thriller with magical trappings. The film is an adventure tale with darker lighting. One lingers in your chest, the other dances across the screen. Both are compelling, but only one traps you inside Hogwarts and makes you feel the chill of every passing shadow. Only one makes you believe that the prisoner wasn't in Azkaban anymore. He was in the castle, among them, watching. Number 23, Lupin learns about the map later. In the dim corridors of Hogwarts, where shadows shift and secrets breathe, a single parchment held the power to unveil the castle's hidden heartbeat. The Marauders map, a magical artifact crafted by 4 mischievous students decades prior, becomes a thread that ties the past to the present. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, this map not only charts hidden passageways and reveals the movements of every soul within the castle walls, it also exposes a stark contrast between the original book and its film adaptation. The difference lies not in the magic of the map itself, but in the way Remus Lupin comes to know about it, and what that moment reveals about him as a character. In J.K. Rowling's novel, Lupin's discovery of Harry's use of the map is slow, unsettling, and heavy with consequence. The moment doesn't come when Harry first shows an interest in the parchment, nor when he uses it for innocent mischief. Instead, the revelation crashes down like thunder only when Severus Snape, driven by suspicion and long-harbored resentment, delivers the map to Lupin. Snape, seething and bitter, cannot unlock the map's secrets himself. It says it is for the use of Mr. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. Snape growls, frustrated by the parchment's cheeky refusal to cooperate. It is only then that Lupin sees the map, recognizes his old nickname etched into its corners, and realizes that Harry has been using the very creation he and his friends had made so long ago. This delayed realization is vital. It shows Lupin as a figure of responsibility, not omniscience. He is not all-knowing, he is cautious, quiet, and burdened. When he understands that Harry has been sneaking into Hogsmeade through hidden tunnels, a place forbidden to third years without permission, his reaction is not humorous or dismissive. It is grave. The book describes Lupin's face as pale, his eyes serious, his words heavy with concern. He scolds Harry not only as a teacher, but as someone who once stood at the edge of chaos himself and knows the cost. "Did you think," Lupin says, "that your father would have let you go wandering in Hogsmeade alone?" The line pierces. It draws a boundary between admiration for James Potter's rebelliousness and the adult Lupin's commitment to protect Harry from that same recklessness. In contrast, the film paints a much lighter image. Almost immediately upon Harry's acquisition of the map, Lupin seems to recognize it. There's a casual familiarity in his tone, an unspoken acknowledgement that he knows the parchment's magic, even its creators. There's no confrontation, no scolding. In fact, Lupin's concern seems softened, as if he has already accepted that Harry's rule-bending ways are inherited and inevitable. While this cinematic choice may serve to move the plot along quickly and keep Lupin's relationship with Harry warm and mentor-like, it sacrifices the layered complexity that the book so carefully builds. The novel's version of events tells us more than just who knows what and when. It reveals who Lupin truly is, a man who once lived on the edge of mischief, but who has grown older, wiser, and more cautious. He carries the pain of his past friendships, especially with the knowledge that one of the map's creators, Peter Pettigrew, is believed to have betrayed James and Lily. Lupin's scolding of Harry is not merely about breaking school rules, it is about the ghosts of the past, about a world where disobedience once seemed harmless but ended in tragedy. The book makes this clear through subtle emotional cues. Lupin trembles slightly. His hands tighten on the map. He looks at Harry not just as a student, but as a son of a lost era, an era that ended in blood. The tension in this scene is not only emotional, it is narrative. The reader feels the shift. Until this moment, Lupin has been the kindest of professors, approachable and gentle. But now, the mask of friendliness lifts, and we glimpse the deeply responsible adult beneath. The confrontation adds weight to the story's central themes, the past shaping the present, the danger of secrets, the burden of legacy. It also foreshadows Lupin's internal conflict, his guilt, his silence about the map, and his reluctance to share what he suspects about Sirius Black's true nature. By glossing over this in the film, a crucial layer of tension evaporates. The viewer never sees Lupin wrestle with the same moral questions. The map becomes a tool rather than a symbol. The emotional weight of a teacher discovering his students' dangerous disobedience and the connection to his own youth is reduced to a friendly shrug. This robs the story of one of its more poignant echoes, that the sins of one generation can become the temptations of the next. The book further deepens the moment by showing how Harry responds to Lupin's disappointment. The boy, so often fearless in the face of danger, is struck by shame. He doesn't argue, doesn't defend himself. Instead, he listens, stunned, as Lupin explains how important it is to value safety over bravado. Lupin's voice is not angry. It is exhausted. There's a quiet sorrow in his words, as if he's speaking not only to Harry, but to the memory of James and even to himself. This single moment reveals Lupin's evolution. From Moony, the mischievous schoolboy who once ran wild through the halls of Hogwarts with his three best friends, to Professor Lupin, the weary man who knows what was lost in that wildness. He has seen death. He has watched friends fall. And now, before him stands the son of those fallen friends, unknowingly stepping into the same shadows. Lupin's reprimand is an act of love, not discipline. There is also a haunting irony. Lupin chastises Harry for using the map, yet he is one of its creators. It is as though he is scolding a younger version of himself. The duality of this moment is powerful in the book, layered with regret and warning. The map is more than a magical item. It is a relic of a time when four boys thought they were untouchable. Now Lupin sees the price of that arrogance reflected in the boy standing before him. The film never captures this quiet reckoning. By suggesting that Lupin already knew about the map from the start, it removes the surprise, the sorrow, and the subtle tragedy. It implies that Lupin always had control, that he was never truly afraid for Harry. But the book tells a deeper story. Lupin is afraid. He fears for Harry's safety, for the path he's beginning to walk. And most of all, he fears that history is repeating itself. The timing of the revelation in the book is also more strategic. It coincides with Lupin's growing suspicions about Peter Pettigrew's survival and Sirius Black's innocence. The map becomes a clue, not just a toy. When Lupin sees Pettigrew's name on the map, a name he knows should be long dead, it jolts him into action. The reader understands that everything is connected: the past, the map, the betrayal, and the present danger. It is a slow-burning realization that hits with emotional and narrative force. In the film, this chain of discoveries is compressed and simplified. Lupin casually admits he knows the map and its creators, and then suddenly it becomes a tool in the plot rather than a thread of emotional revelation. This deprives the audience of a profound turning point, the moment when Lupin understands that everything he believed about his friends and their tragic end might have been wrong. Rowling's text invites us to feel the emotional whiplash that Lupin experiences. "I hadn't dared to hope. I thought I was imagining things," he later confesses about seeing Pettigrew's name. The pain in those words is palpable. He has spent years believing in one truth, only to see it crumble before his eyes. And the Marauders map, once a symbol of joyful rebellion, becomes the proof of an unhealed wound. Lupin's delayed discovery of the map is a narrative choice that adds depth to every relationship in the story. Lupin and Harry, Lupin and his lost friends, Lupin and his own conscience. It shows how the past never truly stays buried, and how the tools of youth can return as instruments of revelation and regret. The difference between the book and the film is not just a matter of timing, it's a matter of meaning. In the book, Lupin's discovery of the map is a turning point. In the film, it's a footnote. The weight of responsibility, the ache of memory, the sting of guilt, all of it is washed away in favor of simplicity. But in Rowling's text, the truth arrives like a ghost in the night, uninvited and impossible to ignore. And that truth changes everything. Number 24, Time Turner Dangers Omitted. In the flickering shadows of the Hogwarts clock tower, the Time Turner shimmers with quiet promise. On the screen, it is almost romantic, a beautiful device of brass and glass, delicate as a pocket watch, slung around Hermione's neck as if it were no more than jewelry. In Alfonso Cuarón's Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the Time Turner is a magical adventure tool, and its consequences are minimal. With the twist of time, Hermione and Harry dart into the past, free a doomed hippogriff, rescue a wrongly convicted godfather, and restore a sense of balance. There are no real consequences, no existential weight. Everything proceeds like a well-rehearsed plan. But J.K. Rowling's book paints a different picture. More dangerous, more profound, more real. In the novel, the Time Turner is not a toy. It is a privilege tightly controlled by the Ministry of Magic, handed out not on a whim but under extreme conditions. When Hermione is given permission to use it, it's not a quirky subplot. It is a terrifying responsibility. She must not be seen, not be heard, and must never alter the timeline. Professor McGonagall, acting as the intermediary for the Ministry, makes her swear to keep it secret. And when the time comes to use it for something greater than attending classes, it is Albus Dumbledore himself who impresses the gravity of the situation onto her and Harry. He does not offer encouragement, but a warning. "You know what happened to those who meddled with time, Hermione," Dumbledore says quietly. "We have no room for error. No one must see you." His words are precise, sharp, and weighted with caution. In the book, these moments do not read like a daring rescue mission. They feel like tiptoeing across the edge of a knife. Rowling takes care to inject every step with anxiety. The rustle of leaves too loud, the crack of a twig too dangerous. It's not a lark, it's survival. The novel constructs tension with an almost surgical precision. Harry, crouching behind trees, is not a hero in command of the situation. He's a child clinging to a thin thread of hope. When he watches his past self across the lake being attacked by Dementors, he believes he and Sirius are about to die. And in that moment, what saves them is not the plan, it's the power of love, of memory, of belief. He believes his father will appear, and only at the last second does he realize the figure he saw was not James, but himself. This realization is transformative and terrifying. There is no space for joy, only the cold breath of what if. Contrast this with the film, where the entire sequence plays out like a puzzle being solved by clever minds. The emotional stakes are lighter. Cuarón's visual storytelling is magical, but the psychological terror of potentially unraveling time is softened. We never see the consequences of failure. We never hear Dumbledore speak of the students who vanished into madness for breaking the laws of temporal magic. The audience is never given the full context of what is at stake. The book whispers this truth again and again. This is not a game. Hermione's journey with the Time Turner in the book is also deeply lonely. For an entire year she lives parallel lives, racing across corridors, disappearing between classes, sleeping fewer hours than anyone else. There is a physical and emotional toll. When Ron finally finds out, he is horrified. "You're mental," he says, and it is not a joke. She is carrying the weight of something enormous, and she is doing it alone. In the film, this strain is absent. There are no dark circles under her eyes, no trembling hands. She is composed, confident, and almost breezy. Rowling gives us hints that the Time Turner is not just dangerous, but potentially catastrophic. In an interview, she once referenced a witch who used a Time Turner to relive the same week over and over, only to trap herself in an irreversible paradox. This kind of lore, the true mythos behind magical time travel, is entirely missing from the film. It's not just oversight. It shifts the tone of the story. In the book, the Time Turner is a loaded gun. In the film, it's a flashlight in a dark cave. And then there is Buckbeak, proud, noble, and sentenced to death. His rescue in the film is played with whimsical energy. Hermione throws stones, Harry whispers in the bushes, and the hippogriff escapes into the night with elegance. But in the book, the fear is palpable. Every creak of a branch might mean detection. Every passing second brings them closer to doom. The executioner McNair's axe swings with theatrical flair in the movie, but in the book, the sound of it cleaving through a pumpkin is a moment of sick dread. They were that close to being too late. Sirius Black's escape, too, feels different in the written word. There is no joy in his flight. It is desperate, tragic, and silent. When Harry rides Buckbeak with Sirius clinging behind him, there's no triumph. There's just the soft night wind and the knowledge that this man will have to spend the rest of his life in hiding. The book lets that sorrow linger. The film, on the other hand, closes the scene with a surge of music and a skyward shot. It almost feels like victory. But time doesn't forgive so easily. In the book, once they return to the hospital wing, Dumbledore locks the doors not just to give them cover, but to ensure that the loop closes cleanly. Time travel demands symmetry. Any deviation could create paradoxes. What if they had been seen? What if someone else had touched the Time Turner? What if their actions caused even a minor ripple? Rowling makes sure her readers ask those questions. She offers no answers, only the burden of consequence. And it is important to remember that after Prisoner of Azkaban, the Time Turner essentially disappears from the main storyline. Rowling herself destroys all the Time Turners in the Department of Mysteries in Order of the Phoenix. This isn't a narrative oversight, it's a conscious decision. Time travel is too powerful, too dangerous, too unstable. The books acknowledge this. They respect the mythic weight of bending time. The films, in contrast, leave the door carelessly ajar. There's a deeper philosophical question embedded in the book's treatment of the time-turner. Should anyone have the power to undo fate? The story never celebrates the success of Hermione and Harry's mission as much as it mourns the necessity of it. They don't change the future. They ensure it. They don't defeat fate. They fulfill it. This is the crucial difference. The film presents their actions as clever rewriting. The book reveals them as burdens of destiny. Even the moment of Harry conjuring the Patronus carries a different weight. In the film, it's a glorious burst of light and defiance. But in the book, it is hard-earned, pulled from fear and love, and sharpened by the knowledge that if he fails, Sirius dies, and he dies too. It is not a flourish of spellwork. It is a desperate cry into the abyss of time. And that is the essence of Rowling's vision. Time is not a landscape to walk across. It is a storm to survive. Every action echoes, every shadow watches, and the danger is not in the journey but in the ripple, the unseen consequence. The film, for all its cinematic beauty, erases that fear. It smooths over the cracks. It forgets that time is not a friend. It is a mirror, and once shattered, it never truly repairs. That mirror remains intact in the book only because Harry and Hermione follow the rules, and because they are lucky. But readers are left with the haunting understanding that it could have gone so differently. One glance, one step, one moment of pride, and everything collapses. That is the truth behind the magic, the cost behind the rescue. That is what the film leaves behind in the shadows. Number 25. Percy Weasley's cut roll. Percy Weasley walked the halls of Hogwarts in The Prisoner of Azkaban with a sense of superiority that seemed to elevate him above his younger siblings. He wasn't just a prefect, he was the prefect. His badge gleamed, and so did his sense of duty. Every rule broken by Fred and George Weasley was, to Percy, a personal insult. He hovered around the staff room, eager to take on tasks from Professor McGonagall. He would straighten his shoulders whenever Dumbledore passed. In the book, Percy's role wasn't an afterthought, it was a deliberate thread woven into the atmosphere of Hogwarts, a symbol of ambition, order, and the quiet tension within the Weasley family. Yet in the film adaptation, Percy might as well have been a ghost. He appeared in a few fleeting scenes with no dialogue, no development, no purpose. In the novel, Rowling paints Percy with deliberate strokes. He is ambitious, often insufferable, but never unimportant. During the third year at Hogwarts, when Sirius Black is believed to be targeting Harry, Percy takes his prefect duties even more seriously. He scolds students for wandering after hours and reminds everyone that the fat lady's portrait has been slashed. He's not a background character, he's part of the environment of heightened anxiety. In one scene, he is explicitly shown informing students about safety regulations, repeating the staff's warnings with a sense of importance that borders on theatrical. Percy was in his element, Rowling writes, barking instructions at the terrified first years, ordering them back to their dormitories. This image is vital. Percy is not just a stickler for rules, he is attached to authority, emotionally invested in hierarchy. The contrast with Fred and George sharpens Percy's character. The twins are pranksters, always challenging authority, while Percy is determined to become it. Their endless teasing of him is a running theme in the book, one that reveals more about their brotherly relationship than any single dramatic scene could. When Fred and George enchant his prefect badge to read Pinhead, Percy doesn't laugh. He fumes. He threatens to report them. Their mockery stings not because it's cruel, but because it hits too close to the truth. Percy is already becoming someone his brothers can't relate to. These small sibling dramas add layers to the broader tension building in the Weasley family, something that the films, and particularly The Prisoner of Azkaban, never explore. Percy's relationship with authority in the book begins to shift subtly during this time. He idolizes people like Barty Crouch and Professor McGonagall, and he trusts the system implicitly. When he sees chaos or disruption, he believes it must be corrected. This becomes even clearer when Percy volunteers to assist teachers in enforcing school security after Sirius Black's first attempted break-in. His voice carries in the common room, issuing commands, correcting behavior. Percy is not just a background detail, he is a character on a path. His later defection to the Ministry during the rise of Voldemort begins here, not with any single decision, but in his consistent, almost religious loyalty to structure. The film removes all of this. Percy is present barely. He's in background shots, often wearing the same Gryffindor robes as his younger siblings, with no badge, no authority, and no role. A viewer unfamiliar with the books wouldn't recognize him as Ron's older brother, let alone a prefect. There is no badge to glint in the torchlight, no scenes of him bossing around first years, no tension with Fred and George. The Percy of the film is a silent extra, his presence reduced to a few vague glances and background movements. The audience loses not just his character, but the dynamic that his character introduces. It's in the book's quieter scenes that Percy's character breathes most vividly. When McGonagall needs a message delivered or a group of students organized, Percy leaps at the task. He doesn't just follow orders, he craves them. He becomes an extension of the staff. Rowling uses these moments to build Percy as more than a comic foil. His obedience is not a joke, it's a flaw, a vulnerability. His willingness to trust institutions over family will soon become a major conflict, but only for those who follow his arc from the beginning. Without the Prisoner of Azkaban, that evolution doesn't land. The film cuts out the roots, and later scenes in future films try to harvest fruit from air. Rowling's choice to highlight Percy's tension with Fred and George is not accidental. Their scenes together are a microcosm of ideological conflict. Fred and George embody chaos, humour, rebellion. Percy is order, discipline, seriousness. In one chapter, they sneak dung bombs into the Gryffindor common room, and Percy nearly has a fit. He threatens them with detention, points to his badge, and storms off when they laugh. This isn't sibling rivalry, it's foreshadowing. Percy will one day leave his family behind because he can't reconcile affection with dissent. The movie forgets this, opting instead to focus on grand visuals, Whomping Willow's hippogriffs, time-turners, while the human drama simmers, unexplored. In another pivotal moment in the book, Percy is the one who insists that rules are in place for a reason. When students whisper about Sirius Black, Percy repeats the Ministry's official stance without question. He is the mouthpiece of bureaucracy, even as the truth about Sirius begins to unravel. He doesn't doubt the official narrative, not even once. This unwavering loyalty later transforms into tragic blindness during the rise of the Death Eaters. Percy's inability to think beyond rules will cost him his family's trust. But none of this is visible in the film. The seeds are never planted. The audience only sees the consequence, never the cause. Percy's absence from the movie isn't just a loss of screen time, it's a loss of context. His character is a slow burn, a study in misplaced loyalty, and the third book is where that burn begins to glow. Without his frequent admonitions, the dynamic of the Gryffindor common room changes. Without his heated interactions with the twins, the Weasley family feels flatter. The emotional scaffolding that holds up later books, particularly his estrangement in Order of the Phoenix, feels thinner without this foundation. The viewer is left to guess why Percy acts as he does, whereas the reader knows exactly how it happened. In the film, Professor McGonagall often appears issuing orders alone, without her loyal prefect to carry them out. It may seem minor, but in the book, Percy's presence reinforces her authority. He's an echo of the adult world, stationed among students. His badge and posture remind the younger students that the school is not theirs to run wild in. He contributes to the feeling that Hogwarts, in the wake of Sirius Black's escape, is on high alert. Without Percy, that tension is dulled. The halls feel less regulated, the students less watched. The film loses a texture that the book preserves. Even the humour suffers without Percy. The twins' pranks have less bite when there's no authority figure to react. In the book, Percy's exasperation provides the necessary counterweight to Fred and George's antics. It's not just that they set off fireworks, it's that they do it under Percy's disapproving gaze. That gaze is what makes the reader laugh. Without it, the joke feels incomplete. The Percy-less film plays the twins' behavior as mischievous but aimless, disconnected from any personal rebellion. In the book, their defiance is personal, and Percy is the person they're defying. Percy's marginalization in the Prisoner of Azkaban film is perhaps one of the clearest examples of how film adaptations, in pursuit of runtime efficiency, sometimes sacrifice character development. It's easy to overlook him, especially with the story's thrilling climax involving the shrieking shack and the time-turner. But Percy was never about spectacle. He was about slow-building narrative consequences. He is the warning bell that rings quietly long before anything explodes. And in the book, he rings loud and clear. In the film, he is barely heard at all. The real tragedy of Percy's omission is not just that we miss his reactions, it's that we miss his change. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Percy is already beginning to stand apart. He refers to teachers by their last names even in casual conversation. He rolls his eyes at Ron's complaints. He tries to distance himself from his siblings, not because he dislikes them, but because he's climbing a ladder they mock. The character is sculpted carefully by Rowling to reflect a broader theme, the danger of ambition without empathy. In the film, he becomes little more than set dressing in the Great Hall. Later in The Order of the Phoenix, Percy sends a letter to Ron warning him not to trust Dumbledore, not to be led astray by Harry's delusions. That betrayal cuts deeply, and it only stings because readers remember the Percy of The Prisoner of Azkaban, the one who barked orders, scolded his brothers, and wore his badge like armor. Without that memory, Percy's fall feels abrupt, even confusing. The films ask us to accept it without evidence. The books show us every step he took to get there, and it begins unmistakably in that third year with his badge gleaming and his back turned to the noise of his brother's laughter. Number 26, Hagrid's cabin farewell scene. In Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban, there exists a deeply emotional scene that in the book carries the weight of sorrow, fear, and raw empathy. It happens just before the supposed execution of Buckbeak, the proud hippogriff condemned for scratching Draco Malfoy. In the book, this moment becomes one of the most touching and personal chapters, where grief and friendship unfold in their purest form. Yet in the film adaptation, this crucial moment is stripped down to its skeletal structure, leaving only a faint echo of what was a powerful turning point in the character's development. In J.K. Rowling's book, Harry, Ron, and Hermione don't merely hide behind pumpkins. They go to Hagrid's hut. They sit beside him. They share his pain. It is twilight, and the three friends walk down to his home to support him in the final hours before the executioner's axe falls. Hagrid is devastated, and the kids, despite the fear of being caught, take that risk because they care. The narrative slows down. The pacing allows for grief to settle in. "It's not fair," Hermione whispers, her voice trembling, and this is not just about Buckbeak anymore. It's about how unfair life can be, how sometimes justice isn't justice at all. Hagrid, usually the strong, hearty figure, is utterly broken. His eyes are red, and the massive jug of mead in his hands suggests he's trying to drown more than just sorrow. The atmosphere inside the hut is heavy, and it's here, in the dim candlelight, that Rowling gives us one of Hermione's most humanizing acts. She gets up and hugs him. No fanfare, no words. She simply hugs him. A 12-year-old girl reaching out to a half-giant, not in fear, but in pure empathy. Hermione, whose face was streaked with tears, suddenly got up and threw her arms around Hagrid, the book says. It is a quiet but thunderous moment that defines her character more than any clever spell ever could. This embrace is not shown in the film. The movie skips the entire scene of the trio going into the hut. Instead, we see them lurking at a distance, as if they are mere spectators to Buckbeak's fate. They crouch behind oversized pumpkins, peeking nervously toward the hut. There is no Hagrid sobbing in the flickering firelight, no comforting words, no trembling hands passing mugs of tea. There is no Hermione stepping beyond her own comfort zone to offer a gesture of love. The film focuses instead on building tension for the time-turner twist, but it does so at the cost of emotion. By choosing to avoid the hut scene entirely, the film distances the audience from the heartache that Rowling so carefully crafted. In the book, we are invited into that space of loss. We can almost smell the hay, feel the warmth of the fireplace, hear the awkward shuffling of feet as the trio tries to comfort their friend. The conversation that takes place is rich with detail, with emotional layers. It's not just about Buckbeak, it's about what the kids are willing to risk to stand by someone they love. And in doing so, they cross into a more adult understanding of the world. Moreover, the book version of the scene contains a narrative gem that sets up future revelations. While the kids are inside the hut, a scabbed, grimy rat scuttles out of Ron's pocket and hides. This rat, of course, is Peter Pettigrew in disguise, Sirius Black's old friend and the true traitor of Harry's parents. "Scabbers, no!" Ron cries as the rat flees. This panic becomes the spark for everything that follows: the chase, the shrieking shack, the truth. And it all begins in Hagrid's hut in a moment that the film completely bypasses. Instead, the movie cuts straight from the pumpkin field to Dumbledore, Fudge, and the executioner approaching the hut. We watch from a distance. We never feel the emotional heat of the fire inside, never witness the bonds of loyalty forged there. This isn't just a matter of trimming for runtime. It's a conscious choice to downplay the most vulnerable character's humanity. And that is a loss the film never fully recovers from. There's a stark contrast between the active participation the trio shows in the book and the passive observation they perform in the film. In Rowling's world, the three protagonists are not afraid to step into the shadows and pain of others. They enter the hut because they believe that being there matters. Their presence is a comfort, a protest, a stand against the cruelty they see in the world. But in the movie, their decision to watch from afar removes that layer of courage. It reduces them to observers of tragedy rather than participants in it. This difference alters the emotional trajectory of the story. In the book, the sorrow at the execution feels personal. We know what Hagrid is losing. We've seen his tears soak the sleeves of his coat. We've watched Hermione bite her lip to keep from crying. We've heard Ron and Harry's voices soften in the face of real grief. When the axe falls, we feel it in our bones. When Dumbledore's calm words try to soothe Hagrid, we sense the hopelessness behind them. "It's out of my hands, Hagrid," Dumbledore says, and we know even his wisdom has limits. The missing hut scene also removes a critical moment of character growth for Hermione. Her embrace is not just an act of comfort. It is a milestone in her journey from the rule-bound girl we met in Philosopher's Stone to the compassionate young woman she becomes. That single hug says more about her heart than a dozen spells. She doesn't overthink it. She doesn't calculate the consequences. She simply sees someone hurting and responds with warmth. In the film, this powerful step is erased, and in its place we get only plot. This is not the only time a film adaptation simplifies the emotional complexity of Rowling's writing, but it is one of the most glaring examples. The scene in Hagrid's hut is a microcosm of everything that makes Prisoner of Azkaban the most mature book in the series so far. Its willingness to linger in sadness, to highlight the greys of justice, to show young people navigating the emotional weight of adult decisions. By removing this scene, the film avoids that heaviness, and in doing so, it also avoids the growth it can bring. What remains in the movie is tension without intimacy. We are kept at a safe distance, visually and emotionally. The fear of being caught by the Ministry replaces the deeper fear of losing something that truly matters. We miss the chance to see Hagrid in a rare moment of vulnerability. We miss the unspoken understanding that passes between Harry and his friends. that being there for someone even when you can't fix the problem still matters. It's not just about what is shown or not shown, it's about what is felt. In the book, readers feel the warmth of the hut despite the looming axe outside. They feel the comfort of solidarity even as despair knocks on the door. They feel the injustice of the decision not just intellectually but viscerally. The movie, meanwhile, chooses spectacle and structure, sacrificing soul in the process. This isn't to say the film lacks merit. Alfonso Cuarón's direction brings a visual poetry to the story, a darkness that is fitting for its themes. The time-turner scenes are clever and thrilling, but these strengths do not excuse the omission of a scene that would have brought balance to the third act, one that reminds us that behind the magic, behind the time travel and flying creatures there, are hearts that break and friendships that hold them together. Even Buckbeak, majestic and misunderstood, loses something in this change. In the book, his connection to Hagrid is deepened by the sorrow of the scene. His fate is tied not only to magical lore, but to emotional investment. When he disappears in the movie version, we feel surprise. In the book, we feel relief because we had already grieved the loss. Ultimately, skipping the hut scene strips the story of a vital heartbeat. It may seem small in the grand scheme of the plot, but its absence leaves a silence where there should have been a sob, a hug, a goodbye. In a series so rooted in the idea that love and loyalty matter more than power, it is moments like these that define the soul of the story. And it is these moments the film cannot afford to overlook. Number 27. Misleading image of Sirius Black. Sirius Black's presence in Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban is like a shadow lurking over every page of the book, a shadow that grows darker with each new piece of information Harry learns. The newspapers describe him as the most dangerous prisoner to have ever escaped from Azkaban, a ruthless murderer who betrayed his best friends to Lord Voldemort. In the Daily Prophet, he is portrayed as a deranged killer, with words like murderer and traitor etched into every article. Harry, whose parents died because of Voldemort's betrayal, cannot help but feel consumed by hatred for this man. "I'm going to kill him," Harry says in the book, trembling with anger when he first learns about Sirius Black's supposed crimes. This early setup creates a narrative filled with tension and rage, a fire that burns throughout most of the book, making the final revelation all the more shocking. In the book, Sirius Black is not just a fugitive, he is a ghost from the past, someone who symbolizes the tragedy of the Potters' deaths. Harry overhears conversations about Sirius, each one painting a darker image of this man who was once his father's closest friend. When Harry overhears Mr. Weasley in the leaky cauldron warning Mrs. Weasley that Sirius Black is after Harry, the boy's resolve hardens. This personal vendetta against a man he has never met defines a large part of Harry's emotional journey in the story. The book builds on this anger with every chapter, adding layers of fear and anticipation. It is not just about a murderer on the loose. It is about a young boy facing the nightmare of someone who betrayed his parents, a person he believes he must face one day. The film adaptation, while visually capturing the dark atmosphere of Azkaban and the sense of threat hanging over Hogwarts, does not fully convey the depth of Harry's obsession with Sirius. Much of Harry's internal struggle and growing anger is simplified. The book carefully shows Harry's emotions spiraling out of control, particularly in scenes like when he shouts that he will hunt down Black himself. In the movie, Harry's hatred is touched upon, but it lacks the same intensity. It feels more like a fleeting reaction than a burning vendetta. This difference in portrayal weakens the dramatic tension that builds towards the moment. When Harry discovers the truth about Sirius, one of the most significant moments that illustrates this tension is when Harry overhears Sirius's whispered words, "He's at Hogwarts," while hiding under the invisibility cloak. In the book, this is a critical turning point. Harry believes with absolute certainty that Sirius Black is talking about him. The very thought that a notorious murderer is inside Hogwarts hunting him shakes Harry to the core. This misunderstanding creates a chilling suspense that carries through the story. However, the film barely touches on this moment, reducing its narrative weight. The absence of this misinterpretation makes the final revelation, that Sirius was never after Harry but after Peter Pettigrew, far less shocking for the viewer. The book is masterful in its use of misdirection regarding Sirius's motives. For most of the narrative, we see Sirius entirely through Harry's eyes, clouded by misinformation and fear. When Harry learns that Sirius supposedly betrayed James and Lily, the boy's emotions are raw and visceral. He feels as if Sirius's betrayal is a personal attack on his own life and memories of his parents. He was their friend and he sold them to Voldemort, Harry thinks in fury, vowing that he will be the one to avenge their deaths. This intensity builds up like a coiled spring, ready to snap during the Shrieking Shack confrontation. In contrast, the film introduces Sirius with a level of visual menace, but without the same narrative layering. Gary Oldman's performance captures Sirius's wild and haunted demeanor, yet the screenplay strips away many of the subtle misdirections that J.K. Rowling crafted. The audience gets glimpses of Sirius's humanity far too early, softening the impact of the revelation that he is innocent. In the book, Sirius remains a terrifying mystery right up until the truth is laid bare, which makes the twist feel like a punch to the gut. The film's structure does not allow that same slow-burn shock to develop. Another key difference is the emotional build-up to the scene where Harry confronts Sirius for the first time. In the book, Harry is overwhelmed by a surge of hatred and grief when he faces Sirius in the Shrieking Shack. His first impulse is to attack without hesitation, shouting that Sirius killed his parents. This raw, emotional energy drives the confrontation and underscores Harry's desire for revenge. The film attempts to replicate this moment but fails to show the full weight of Harry's rage, partly because the narrative leading up to it is less intense. Without the earlier scenes of Harry obsessing over Sirius, the impact of their confrontation is diminished. The misunderstanding about Sirius's true intentions is one of the most brilliant narrative tricks in the book. When Harry overhears snippets of conversation about Sirius and Peter Pettigrew, he interprets them all through the lens of revenge. The truth, that Sirius has spent 12 years in Azkaban for a crime he didn't commit and is hunting the real traitor, hits like a lightning strike when revealed. In the book, this revelation is almost cinematic in its intensity. "I would have died before I betrayed your parents," Sirius tells Harry, and the words are both shocking and heartbreaking. The film, however, rushes through this twist, leaving less room for the audience to feel the enormity of the moment.